Hare Krishna, good morning dear devotees from Sridham Mayapur. My name last time I checked is still Madhavananda Das, and this is our daily adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. So today we have a really extraordinary topic. We want to speak about an extraordinary brahmachari in Krishna's brahmachari life, far away from the residence of Vrindavan, and the lonely nights that he would cry himself to sleep in separation from Yashoda and the boys, and especially the Gopis. So before we start, we'll say a few prayers. Gora Graganya Gana Gotra Goloruharam Goranga Gudatama Gopyada Kolpa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namami Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Shaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Vede Ramayanishchaiva Purane Bharate Tata Adavante Chamadyecha Hari Sarvatra Giyate Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lang Gayate Girim Yad Kripa Tamaham Vande Shigurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Parikori Be Chakadola Se Chakadolanka Padaye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So welcome dear devotees to our morning program on Srimad Bhagavatam, and today we have a topic in front of us about Krishna, the extraordinary brahmachari. We're just continuing with our overall topic of the meeting in Kurukshetra, and we're on session number 24, and we haven't gotten to Kurukshetra yet, but we're in Avanti Desh. We began in Vrindavan with our journey, and we went to Mathura, and then we returned to Vrindavan with Nanda Maharaj, and now we've gone back to Mathura, and Jiva Goswami in Gopal Champu describes, he doesn't overtly say it, but we can understand there must have been some kind of little tension, or maybe big tension, between the residents of Mathura and the residents of Vrindavan as to who really is Krishna's father. And perhaps it was to establish that Krishna is their son. When Krishna went to Mathura, Vasudeva and Devaki decided, they have to do the Upanayan and Sanskar for Krishna. He has to have Brahminical initiation. He has to have the Gayatri mantra. And that's a ceremony which really marks this is my child. And so Krishna kind of slowly, Jiva Goswami says, okay, we'll do that. And then he wrote a letter to Nanda Maharaj. And he said, okay, they're going to do this, but really I'm your son. I want you to know. And you should do this at the same time in Vrindavan because I'm really your son, but use one of my friends as a proxy, as my representative. So that was done. And then Krishna decided that for the benefit of the world, for Lokasiksha, now he's thinking more like God. He's gone from Vrindavan. I have to set a good example and I accept a guru. And so then Jiva Goswami says Krishna was a little perplexed. Who's the best guru to accept? Well, Vyasadev's the best. Jiva Goswami says Krishna is thinking, but Vyasadeva will never agree to it because he's my devotee. So I have to find someone who's not a Vaishnava, because any of the Vaishnavas, they won't agree to give me initiation. So he had to go to a Shaivite, because the Shaivites are also, many different descriptions are given there by Krishna, that someone who's a devotee of Shiva is also my devotee, because Krishna loves Lord Shiva so much. So he decided to accept Sandipani Muni. And we heard something in our last session about Krishna's journey to Avanti Desh, and the people on the way, how they were treating Krishna and Balaram, and how they were so astonished, and how Krishna and Balaram hid themselves, and they didn't openly identify themselves even to Sandipani Muni, and Sandipani Muni was so very, very attracted by them. So, in the Uttarakanda of the Gopal Champu, chapter 8, we're continuing our discussion today, Jiva Goswami describes how Krishna and Balaram, although the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they're Anadir, Adir, Govinda, they have no cause, but they're the cause of everything. At the same time, when they adopted the life of brahmacaris, they went out and begged food. And Jiva Goswami comments, he says, Atta didivi bhaksha gateshu chateshu jivika rupav amu ivastam. He says they're going out and doing this bhikshu. They're begging for alms. But actually, in reality, jivika rupav, they're the life maintenance of everyone. But at the same time, Krishna and Balaram were so very, very attractive. Even though the residents of the ashram didn't know they were attending school with God, and even though Sandipani Muni himself didn't recognize these wonderful, amazing students that he had, still when they would go out to beg alms, the other boys were so attracted by them. They said, no, you don't have to do anything. We'll beg and we'll carry the food and everything. You don't have to. You can just stand in the back and just look beautiful. Whatever you do. And we'll go and we'll do all the begging and we'll carry the food and everything. But Jiva Goswami says, Kintu, but Krishna and Balaram apparently weren't happy with that. No, come on, we're brahmacharis, man. This is not good. You got to also let us do some work. So viparitam, he says, viparitam means when things get reversed. So sometimes, apparently, they were also going out and begging. Viparitam abudetad anayor bhikshamanayo. So when they went out to do bhiksha, bhikshita vijanaste piyataste jisti bhikshutam. But when they went out and begged, just when the householders, someone would knock on the door, and maybe they would hear some voice, Bomata Bhagavati Bhiksham Dehi, please give us some more. But they just come out, and nobody even had to say anything. They just look at them. Can I give you something? What do you want? So they must have become very popular with the other brahmacharis. We'll go out in the collection with Krishna and Balaram. It's good today. And actually, Jiva Goswami says that they didn't identify themselves as Krishna and Balaram. They just said, I'm the black one and he's the white one. That was their for those of you who are worried about racial tones, I'm sorry, but that's what they said. So Jiva Goswami says that when they went out, matri drishtam akarona na kevalam, they didn't look at the young women who were giving things as mothers. Now that's interesting, because in the Manasamhita it says Matrivat Padadari Shu, that every person should see all other ladies as mother. But here, Jiva Goswami is distinctly saying Matri Drishta means to see. Akuru they didn't see them as mothers, but Yugma Metadihya Datriyo Vate, in those ladies, in their yovana, they were in their prime of their youth, they looked at Krishna and Balaram with great motherly affection. Now, there's no explanation given by Jiva why it is they didn't look at them as mothers, but we may have a clue from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who describes the entrance to Mathura, a topic we spoke about weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, that when Krishna and Balaram entered into Mathura, they were looking at all the girls. It's not very nice. You shouldn't look at the girls. You'll get beaten more. It's a dangerous occupation. But Krishna and Balaram are looking at the girls. Why are they looking at the girls? Vishwanath Chakravarti and the girls were very happy. Jiva Goswami says that they were doing that because they were thinking, maybe some of the gopis might have slipped away and come here to Mathura. Are there some gopis? And they were looking, or maybe there's some girls who are like the gopis, and so they were looking. No. They were always looking for the gopis. So perhaps in the same way, when Krishna and Balaram, now they're going door to door and begging alms, no doubt they would remember the elderly ladies of Vrindavan. And no doubt they would remember when they see the young ladies, they might remember the gopis of Vrindavan. But they didn't look at them as mothers. Rather, these young ladies, they must have been looking on where's the gopis. Moreover, as we discussed in our last session, on the strength of some Upanishad stories, that Krishna is Nitya Brahmachari. Krishna is always a brahmachari. We told the story how, we'll just encapsulate it again very briefly, how Krishna one day said something to the gopis, I have to go see my guru. And the gopis said, what, you have a guru? Yeah, I have a guru. Everybody should have a guru. Who's your guru? And Krishna told him, Durvasa Muni. Oh, we want to go and meet him. Where does he stay? He lives on the other side of the Jamuna. And the gopis looked at each other and said, well, how can we go there? The water's really deep. And Krishna said, look, I'll give you a mantra, special mantra. You chant the mantra. And just like the Red Sea parted in front of Moses in the Bible, something will happen and you'll be able to cross the Jamuna. So the gopis said, cool, well, what's the mantra? And Krishna told him, Krishna Nitya Brahmachari. The Krishna's always a brahmachari. And the gopis kind of looked at each other. Right, sure, okay. So they went to the Jamuna and they said, Krishna Nitya Brahmachari, and all of a sudden the water parted. That's pretty good. And they crossed over and they brought with them hundreds and hundreds of different preparations to feed Durvasa Muni. And Durvasa Muni ate everything, like enough for 100 people or something in just one moment. And the gopis were very impressed. And then they said, okay, now we got to go back and cross the river. And they asked Durvasa Muni, how can we cross the river? And what was the phrase? I can't remember the Sanskrit. But anyway, Durvasa Muni, you remember? Nira something. Niravadi and Niravad, I think it's Nir. It's okay. He said that you just chant this mantra that Durvasa Muni only eats kusha grass. He doesn't eat anything. And the gopis are looking at, what's going on, man? You just ate enough for 100 people, and what's this Krishna Nitya Brahmachari stuff? And so they chanted the mantra, and sure enough, it worked. So when they went back, they went to Krishna and said, look, you're not a brahmachari. From your youth, Rupa Goswami describes something a little R-rated in his Pajavali. He says that one of the gopis were asking Krishna, how much butter did you eat or something? At that time, Krishna reached over, and he's a little baby, he's like this big. He reaches over and grabs the breast of Danishta Gopi, and he said, this much. So Krishna, from his very birth, he had this Madhurya kind of ras. And the gopis are, how are you a brahmachari? And how is it that Durvasa Muni doesn't eat anything? And then Krishna explained to them, because Durvasa Muni is a liberated soul, he understands he's not the body. The body may be eating, but I'm not eating. So Durvasa Muni really doesn't eat anything. Okay, but how are you a brahmachari, buddy? Come on. And Krishna said that brahmachari, as we'll discuss some today, brahmachari iti brahman achar. Brahmachari, the word means someone who's situated in Brahman. And someone who's situated in Brahman means they don't have lust. So although I'm associating with all the gopis, I'm not doing it in a lusty way. So I'm a brahmachari. Right? So it's an amazing, this story is from the Upanishads, but it's an amazing thing now that same Krishna who dances in the Ras Lila with thousands of gopis who are married to other men, now he's become a brahmachari in the ashram of Sandipani Muni. And I haven't seen any commentaries from our acharyas in this regard, but I think it's very significant that when Krishna leaves the Braj gopis, he becomes a brahmachari. Just say that much. So Krishna now has become a brahmachari and he's become very strict. He doesn't talk to ladies or anything. It reminds me of a poem that I came across in a book called A Century of Indian Epigrams, which was published by Cambridge University in 1899. And there's some Sanskrit verses which were translated by someone named Paul Elmore Moore. And this is from some Sanskrit poems of Bhartrihari. If you know Bhartrihari, he's a famous writer, and he's a real heavy brahmachari in what he's writing. So some people say he's a brother of the famous Indian king Vikramaditya, if you know Vikramaditya. So anyway, this Paul Elmore Moore, in 1899, he translated this poem, a very romantic poem. We have a nice young couple. It's a nice romantic poem. He said, love's fruit in all the world is only this. This is the only thing that's love's fruit. Love's fruit in all the world is only this, that two as one should think. And they that disagree yet woo love's bliss, dead corpse would link. In other words, such a nice romantic way. He's saying that the real fruit of love in this world, that two people should think like one. And if they start disagreeing, then it's not really lust, it's not really love, it's just a corpse with a corpse. A dead corpse with a dead corpse. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kaviraj Goswami says, Atmindriya priti vancha tari bholikam, Krishnendriya priti icha dhare prema nam. That he defines what is lust and what is prema, what is love. Atmindriya priti vancha, to try to satisfy the atma indriya, my own senses, he says that's lust. Whereas Krishnendriya priti vancha, the desire to please Krishna's senses, that's prema, that's love. Prema Vivarta by Jagadananda Pandit, he describes in the section he calls Braja Gopi Vyatita Piriti Bhujana. He says only the gopis understand what is love. And in the material world, we often comment on this, we have our Maha Mantra, right? 16 words and 32 syllables of this Maha Mantra, and by chanting this Maha Mantra, you can get everything. But don't think we're the only ones with a Maha Mantra. In the material world, the materialists also have a Maha Mantra. And in the same way we have this mantra, and we say by chanting this mantra you can get everything, they consider that if you hear this mantra, then your life is perfect. And if you don't hear this mantra, then your life is useless. And their mantra is only 3 words. I love you. And if you hear these 3 words, I love you, oh my God, you got to call your friend on the phone. And you know what he said to me today? And you start crying and you're so happy. But there's a problem with that mantra, because in the material world, it actually has no meaning. Because of these 3 words, I love you, they don't understand who I am. They don't understand themselves as a spirit soul. They don't know what love is, and they don't know who you are. So the I love you really has no meaning, and it's really only love. And therefore, in Prema Vivarta, Jagadananda Pandit speaks about this love, and it's a really beautiful poem. He goes, Piriti, 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 bole, piriti, bujila ke. Piriti means love. Piriti, 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 bole, piriti, everybody's saying love, 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 but who understands love? Jejana piriti bujite pare braja gopi hoya se. The persons who really understand love, those are the gopis. Piriti boliya tinati akaka. Tiniti agara vidita bhuvana maje. Jahate pasila se majila kitara kalankalaje. Very beautiful poetry. He says that this word piriti, tinati akar, it's 3 syllables. And it's vidita bhuvana maje. It's very famous throughout the universe. And whoever has this love, they become oblivious to shame or disrepute in this world. Just like someone, if a boy and a girl decide, I'm in love with this boy, they don't care what their mother says. They don't care what their father says. This is it. And I'm sorry, Mom, but but it's the gopis who really understand what that love is, what real love is. And in Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, in chapter 8, there's a conversation between Ramananda Roy and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's called Ramananda Samvad. And in that Ramananda Samvad, Ramananda Roy is teaching Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about love. And he says there, Sakivina e lila pushta nahi hoy. That without the Sakivina, without the gopis, e lila pushta nahi hoy. This lila, pushti nahi hoy, you understand Bengali? It can't be nourished. There's no question. Saki Leela, the Sakis, these pastimes, because of the Sakis, Vishtarya, they're expanding these pastimes. And Saki Ashradoy, they're relishing these pastimes. This is, we were speaking about this last night in another Zoom class. This is Parakiya Brajite Prachar. This is the purport of Prachar, that this real love is there, this love of the gopis. In the Ujjwal Nilamani, Rupa Goswami, he defines, we were speaking of this last night, what is the definition of a gopi? Important question. He says, Prema Lila Viharanam Samyak Vistarika Saki. Again, the word Vistarika is used. Vishramba Ratna Piti Cha. That someone who expands Vistarika, the love of Krishna with his enjoyment amongst the gopis, that's a Saki. That's Nikunja Yuno Rati Keli Siddhya Yali Bir Yuktir Apekshani. The Gurudev is very expert in assisting the gopis. And how does he assist the gopis? By preaching in this way. And Prabhupada in Hawaii, I don't know what year it was, but Rameshwar Prabhu asked him a question. What is the meaning of this Nikunja Yuno Rati Keli Siddhya? And Prabhupada said this means preaching. And so it means assisting the gopis. This is the kirtan of our sampradaya. And therefore Srila Prabhupada, there's a beautiful lecture he gave in Gainesville, Florida in 1971. When we remember Gainesville, I remember Mayapur because Prabhupada went there. It's one of the most famous college towns in America. And so they have the Gators football team there. And the devotees go and do Harinam regularly to football games. You've heard of the Gators the University of Florida in Gainesville, a famous place. So Prabhupada went there, and Prabhupada, in the beginning of his talk, he said, we're here at this place, this remote place, far away from the center of the world, far away from Mayapur. It's a very beautiful thing, because so for most people, they would probably think Mayapur is a very remote place, especially Anapani Radha. She would agree with that. It's a 5-hour taxi drive there and back to Kolkata. Mayapur is but Prabhupada said this very distant place. Anyway, Prabhupada in that talk, he said, if people are trained to become Krishna conscious, then automatically everyone will be happy. Anyone who will join, anyone who will hear, anyone who will cooperate, everyone will be happy. So our process is a natural process. You love God. And if you're actually expert in loving God, then naturally you will love everyone. Sometimes devotees, they think, we gave a lecture, I often speak about this in, Odessa in Ukraine. And I was speaking about how devotees should learn to love devotees. And after we finished, one of our brahmachari friends, who's a really staunch brahmachari, was sitting in the front, and he raised his hand and he said, Prabhuji, there's no such thing as love in this material world. And Prabhupada wrote that in a letter, actually, to one person. There's no such thing as love in the material world. So I told him, I said, yes, I agree with you, but we don't want to live in the material world. We want to live in the spiritual world. So the devotees, oftentimes, that we say, yes, this is love, and this is the science of love, and the yoga of love. And then you come and they find everybody's quarreling amongst themselves. And there's divorce rates that are really high amongst the devotee couples and things, and it's depressing. So what does it mean? We're not against love, but we should understand what real love is. And Prabhupada's saying that here. You love God. And if you love God, then you'll naturally love everyone else. Just like a Krishna conscious person, because he loves God, he loves the animals also. He loves the birds, beasts, everyone. But so-called humanitarian love means they're loving some human being, but the animals are being killed. Why do they not love the animals? Because they're imperfect. But the Krishna conscious person will never kill an animal or give trouble to an animal even. That is universal love. If you only love your brother or sister, or your husband or your wife, that's not universal love. Universal love means you love everyone. And that universal love can be developed by Krishna consciousness, not by otherwise. So there's a big topic, just to touch on. Krishna Kun gets disturbed when I speak about this. I won't go into it so deeply. Oh God. See, there's 3 different types of love. One is Stula Deha Priti. And Stula Deha, you understand in Bengali? The affection for the Stula Deha, for the mundane body, which is 1/16 of an inch thick, because that's how thick the skin is. And if a young girl, the boy loves her, but someone throws acid on her face, he no longer loves that anymore, because that love is just skin deep. So better than that is Sukshma Priti, Sukshma Deha Priti. Some affection for the subtle body. We both like to play chess. Wow, she's really cool. She likes chess. And she also likes classical music. This is really a match made in heaven. But the Sukshma Priti also is, as the Bhagavatam says, it's hoitaki and pratiyata. It has a motivation. I want to like her because then I'm going to learn to play chess better. And she's going to teach me more about classical music or whatever. It has a motivation, and therefore it's pratiyata. It has an end. And it's not yayatma superseded. It doesn't satisfy the soul. So even though they like to play chess together, but that subtle type of affection, that is also temporary, because today she likes to play chess, but then after some time she decides, I like mud wrestling and I no longer like classical music, now I'm into punk rock. And where's all the love now? I don't care for you anymore. So that type of love, that type of affection is also frustrating. But real love is atmapriti, love for the soul. And therefore the Sattvata Tantra says, Hari lila sutochara, pareshu satatam tvaya karya pritistavaharir yata bhakti nanashyati. That we should learn how to love devotees. And how do we love devotees? By keeping Krishna in the center. Because Krishna is a personification of love. And when Krishna is there, then there's no question of sense gratification, just lust, which always leads to some frustration. It's not the way I thought it was going to be. I got married. I thought she was just going to say, yes, Prabhu, whatever you say, Prabhu, I'll wash the dishes, Prabhu, right away. I'm so happy to get to wash the dishes for you, and I'm so happy to get to clean the house and do everything, Prabhu. And he's thinking, yes, this is going to be like, and she's thinking, he's going to buy me chocolates and flowers and tell me I love you every day, and it'll be romantic, and we'll go on dates. And those are expectations which are the result of upadhis. Upadhis are designations that I have this idea that this relationship is going to be like this, and then when that relationship doesn't end up the way I expected, then it breaks, because that relationship is hoitaki, it has a motivation. But real love is ahoitaki, it's apratiyata, it never ends. And therefore, chiyatma suprasidati. And that real love, the Sapada Tantra says, comes by learning to love devotees, by loving them for Krishna Katha, loving them for Kirtan. And if we keep Krishna in the center of relationships, just like there's one article, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says, he says that Vaishnava marriage is not the same as Vedic marriage. He says in a Vaishnava marriage, it's not that the wife serves the husband or the husband serves the wife, rather they serve each other, because how can a Vaishnava accept another Vaishnava as their servant? Rather, they serve each other for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna. And that's real love. And although we talk about that theoretically in so many different ways, we need to learn that. In the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, Krishna speaks to Uddhava, and he tells him, look, you should worship me. And Uddhava says, well, how should I do that? And then Krishna gives him a few different ways, two of which are very interesting. In text 43 of that 11th chapter, he says, Gos Anga Yavasadina Vaishnave Bandhu Satkritya, that I can be worshipped through the cows. That's the first thing he says. And how do you do that exactly? He says, Yavasadina, by offering them grass and nice things to eat. And the cows become very, very happy. That's how you worship. And Vaishnave Bandhu Satkritya. You worship me in the form of the Vaishnavas in two ways. One, by being loving friends with them. And the second, Satkritya, by giving respect to them. And that respect is the essence of all relationships. Vishwanath comments on that verse. He says that one should respect the Vaishnava with attachment as a friend. So this is a big topic, and I don't want to go into relationships much more, but we're speaking something about brahmachari life. So Krishna and Balaram, they went begging with all the boys, and they were going out every day, but every day they were going out, and more people. Did you know those boys are coming? Yeah, I'm gonna offer more to them today. And people, they're like having, after a while, they had to have a cart to bring back all the different offerings and things that everybody was offering to Krishna and Balaram. And meanwhile, Sandipani Muni, he couldn't figure it out, but he was getting really, really attached to these two boys. And so Sandipani Muni was so attached to them. He said, they're so soft. Sandipani Muni previously, Jiva Goswami had mentioned how Sandipani Muni told his wife, I can tell these two boys were raised with lots of love and affection, and they ate lots of milk products. Lots of butter, because they're so soft. They're so gentle. And he couldn't bring himself to make them do any hard work. So he would tell all the other disciples that you should do these things. And one day, his wife asked her husband, she said, amongst all your disciples, who's the most devoted? And he said, those two Kshatriya boys, the black one and the white one. But then she smiled, she said, I don't see them serving you. And he told her, look, I know. It's because I told them not to. I forbade them. And externally, they're following that order. But when no one's looking, then they're trying to do whatever service they can. This is the nature of Krishna and Balaram. And this also is a lesson for us that many times, just like Pancharatna Prabhu came over for lunch yesterday, and we were speaking about the Amish and their sense of community. And he mentioned something that really struck me. He said that the Amish, there's like a saying they have amongst them that as soon as we make a community hall, then everything is spoiled. How is it spoiled? Because their sense of community is so intimate. And as soon as we make something official, and there's a meeting hall, then it's going to spoil everything. It won't be so sweet. We're going to such and such person's home, and it's a little bit of a small room, and we sit close together. Now we have this big hall, and we're official. And there's this official kind of place. So in a similar way, our bhakti, our service to Guru, becomes spoiled when we make it external. And we show it off to everybody else, and we advertise it. And unfortunately, sometimes devotees, they can't distinguish in their preaching what is their own personal bhajan and what is their activities of preaching. This thing's not working, Maybe the battery ran out. Anyway. they can't distinguish between those two things. And they equate preaching with advertising my bhajan, and with going around and telling everybody how much bhajan I'm doing. But Gopaya Nija Malakam, it said in Hari Bhakti Vilas, you should hide your mala. You should hide your bhajan. In a similar way, here Krishna and Balaram are teaching us that real service, the best service, is ahoitaki seva. There's hoitaki seva, there's ahoitaki seva. When I become the temple president, or when I'm giving class online on Facebook, right, live streaming, then it's maybe hoitaki seva, because you're doing it to see how many clicks you get, how many likes you get. And if you get 100 likes or 1,000 likes or whatever it is, then I'm successful. It's become viral, Prabhu. And we think of the success of our preaching in that term. But Srila Prabhupada, we were hearing a recording recently of Prabhupada, was saying that even if people don't accept anything from you, even if they won't take a book, your success is that you're going out and you're trying. So Krishna sees that, and that's the success. That's always our motivation. But when we become bahirmukh, we become external persons, then we think of success in terms of numbers and figures. How much money, how many people did I bring, how many books, and numbers of books did I do, instead of quality. But Prabhupada said we want quality. So there's a nice story that one day there was some heavy rain, and at the same time, Sandipani Muni's wife, she told the students, the brahmacaris there, the disciples, you should go and bring some firewood. But it was heavy raining, but there was nothing to cook with. So she told him, you go get something. They said, what can we do? And he said, I don't know. And she said, get some firewood from somewhere. But it was also getting late in the day. And those disciples, they were afraid. They said, how can we go? It's so late. I don't know. And Krishna and Balaram, they heard about that. And without saying anything, and sometimes it said it was Sudama, they went very deep in the forest immediately to find the best wood. And when they went, then the other brahmacharis, they followed. But at that time, there became a terrific downpour of rain, and they couldn't see anything, and they couldn't find their way back out. In the meantime, Krishna and Balaram, they were collecting wood. How do you collect firewood in the rain? You look, I used to live in the forest some. You have to look underneath trees, underneath other things, and you can find underneath rocks, sometimes you find some dry wood here and there. When they were collecting that, and they were protecting that with their own bodies. That firewood is so important because this is for Gurudev's seva. And so the next morning, Sandipani Muni got up and he looked around. He said, where's all the students? And his wife said, well, I think they went to look for firewood yesterday. And he became really angry with her and started chastising her. And without even doing his morning rites or anything, he immediately went to the forest. And he found Krishna and Balaram there. Everybody was shaking, soaking wet and cold. And they're protecting that firewood with their bodies. And when Sandipani Muni saw that, he was so very, very impressed. And he saw that Krishna and Balaram, he came upon them and he saw that they were speaking to the other disciples very quietly. And Sandipani Muni was being very quiet, and they didn't understand that he was there. He's overhearing. And Krishna and Balaram were making jokes with the other boys. And why were they making jokes? Because everybody's shaking and they're so cold. There was no blanket. They didn't sleep all night. And there's nothing to eat, and it's a bit freaky, in the forest like that. So Krishna and Balaram are making jokes with them. And Sandipani Muni saw that, and he became so very, very pleased with them. And later, Krishna tells Sudama Vipra that he said, Nan arta kovida brahman vanashama vitam iha yimoya guruna vacha taranchanjo bhavarnanam. He said, my dear Sudama, in this human society, someone who's a kovida, who's an expert person, they should follow the orders of Guru. Because by following the orders of Guru, you'll cross over the ocean of material existence. And he spoke of a famous verse my Guru Maharaj like to quote very much. Naham ija prajadivyam tapasopasamena va Tushyayam sarvabhutatma guru sishrushrishā yata. That I'm very pleased with that person who serves a guru at any cost. Who, with his body, mind, and speech, kaya, mana, vacha, serves Gurudev. That person is the best of the disciples. And he tells Sudama Vipra that I'm not so pleased by someone who does brahmachari life, by someone who's following Varnashram Dharma or this or that, but I'm very pleased by someone who serves the Guru in a sincere way. So at that time, Jiva Goswami says, Sandipani Muni took that wood away from Krishna and Balaram. No, this is not right. You're too soft. You boys have been raised eating butter, we can tell. You can't carry this. And he put it on the heads of some of the other disciples, and they came back. And then he gave the wood to his wife, and he had the students study. Jiva Goswami says a very beautiful thing. Although there were so many different students there, and Krishna and Balaram loved all of them, he was particularly attracted to Sudama. And why was he attracted to Sudama? Because he had a friend by the same name in Braj, Sudama Vipra. In the same way, he says that he was attracted to Sudama, the garland maker in Mathura, because it reminded him of his cowherd boyfriend. In the same way, Jiva Goswami says that Krishna showed affection to Arjun, the Pandava, because one of his Priyanarma Sakhas is Arjun, and is another cowherd boy by the same name. So Sandipani Muni began training Krishna and Balaram, and just in one lesson they learned all the Vedas. In 64 days they mastered all the 64 different arts, which is an interesting thing too. I'm not going to go in that direction today. We wrote some article about this previously, but that there's art and bhakti, they're inseparable. You can't separate them. Therefore, the 64 arts of bhakti, which originate with the Ras Leela, all those different arts, including painting, including cosmetics, including cooking, including stand-up comedy, that also begins with the Ras Leela. According to Kavi Karnapur in Ananda Vrindavan Champu, it's a long, long discussion about all that, and we gave some class about that not so long ago. But it's said that after Krishna's dancing with the gopis, that Ras Leela begins with rag, with some melodies, and Krishna's playing on his flute, and the gopis come, and then there's some tal, just by the sound of their walking and running. There's some different beats in that sound. And then there's some sangeet, the gopis begin singing with Krishna, and then there's some nritya, there's some dancing. And then the gopis, they begin to decorate the kunj, and they're making paintings, and they're cooking. They're doing all these different arts originate with the Ras Leela. And Krishna dances with the gopis for one Brahmaratri, Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Maharyad Brahmanovadi, which is 1,000 yugas, kind of a long time to dance. And they become a little tired. So they go and take bath in the Jamuna, and then there's some refreshments, they eat something. And then at that time, Madhu Mangal, who's a Priyanarma Sakha, who's an intimate Sakha there, he's with Krishna and the gopis quite often, he starts doing stand-up comedy. And that's also one of the arts. And the gopis, their fatigue goes away from that. So Jiva Goswami describes Sanipanir Aditam Harir Ramabhyam Iti Kyatam, that Krishna and Balaram, they were learning Hari Ramabhya Iti Kyatam from Sandipani Muni, but Sandipanis Tutabhyam Brahmam Apahatavan Bahutra Vidyasu. Brahma means that some bewilderment that Sandipani Muni learned from Krishna and Balaram. And this is also an important lesson for us in another sense. They say the best way to learn something is to teach. And every parent, as a good parent, will admit, I learned so many things from my kids. I don't know what they learned from me. They didn't listen. Your mother probably says that, right? They don't listen to me at all. They didn't get anything. But maybe they learned from you. And you'll see someday when you have children also, you learn from them. And that's real wisdom. Rather than thinking that this person's going to learn from me, I'm going to learn from them. And we should give up the abhiman that I'm such a great personality, that I know so many things. So I'm going to stop there, In our next session, we're going to speak something about this topic, which I teased everybody with in the beginning, about Krishna and Balaram crying themselves to sleep, remembering the Brijbasis. But it's too big and too sweet to try to start with that right now. So I'm going to just mark something here. And we'll start there in our next session. And now what I want to ask the devotees, both who are here in the room with us and also online, and I want to thank Vrindavan Kirtan Prabhu and Madhupati Prabhu and others for taking part. Hari Ramesh, Brajabanita, nice to see you. Subal Sham Prabhu, Hari Krishna. And Naman, I want to ask if the devotees have any reflections they want to share, what you're walking away with. Nitai Padakamala Haribol, Naveen, and Madhupati Prabhu, and Ujjwal Mataji. I'm going to read out there's some comments and questions, some reflections I'd like to read from the devotees here. Madhupati Prabhu in Hungary, he has a question. Should we develop more respect to the present day Shaivites as devotees of the best devotee of Krishna? We can give respect to them in that sense. We can, especially because as Prabhupada once was asked, he said, who is better, the Christians or the Shaktas who they kill animals and they offer them to Goddess Kali? Who is better? And Prabhupada answered, the Shaktas are better. Those worshippers of Goddess Kali, because they're doing something within the Vedic canon, within the Vedic tradition. And the Christians, they're not as likely to come to worship Krishna. So we can give some respect to them, but if they don't respect Krishna, then how can we be very happy with them? Even with devotees, if someone may be a devotee, but if they don't like to hear and chant, they come to the Sunday feast program just for the prasadam. They show up like that, right? And that's okay. They're our friend, and we love them. And all they want to talk about is the election in America and how this and that, and argue about this or some conspiracy theory thing, and they're very angry about this. We love them, but maybe we want to hear about Krishna. Come on, life is too short for that. So we can appreciate them because they're within this Vedic system. They're offering respect to Shiva. And Shiva, we can see, is Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu. So we can tell them, I love you and respect you because Lord Shiva is the greatest devotee. There was one conversation with Brahmananda Prabhu in Mauritius. And Brahmananda was telling Prabhupada, there's this life member Prabhupada, and we preached to him, and he's giving money and things, but he won't stop worshiping Lord Shiva. And Prabhupada said, that's okay. Lord Shiva, he's a Vaishnav. And they said, but Prabhupada, he won't chant Hare Krishna. He's just chanting Om Namo Shivaya. And Prabhupada said, that's okay. Lord Shiva's a great devotee. And if he does that, Lord Shiva will bless him. And the devotee at one point said, it's okay, Prabhupada? Yes, it's okay. So we can give respect like that. But still, our heart is with those persons who worship Krishna. Hare Krishna, Subal Sham Prabhu, Nitai Pada Kamala. So Madhupati Prabhu says, as to representatives of Sandipani Muni, we can see them as representatives of Sandipani Muni. We can see them as devotees of Lord Shiva, who's a great devotee himself. And Ujjwala Rasagya Mataji comments, she says, what would you say when one is given the service of giving katha, but not too many people are interested to attend for whatever reason? Well, thank you for such a nice question. We should do that katha not for popularity for other people, but we should do it for our own purification. Recently I was asked if I wanted to take part again in the Govardhan retreat, which we've been doing for 20 years or something. And I said yes. And then the organizer told me that one of my friends, who's also a speaker there, didn't want to attend it because it's going to be online. And I told that organizer, I said, no, the reason I like to do it is it's good for me, because it gives me some time to think about the topics and to prepare something. And my Guru Maharaj told me that. He said, if someone asks you to speak, you have no choice, you must. But when you speak, you just repeat what you've heard from your Guru and the previous acharyas, and don't think it belongs to you. So we do that for our own benefit. And he commented sometimes, he would say that the kirtan of the disciple is another name for shravan, for hearing. Because we're just repeating what we've heard. And it's for our benefit. If we start thinking it's for the other, gee, I had 200 people watch this online or this or that, then what's the benefit of our talk? It's just something, some illusion for us. And it adds to our conditioned nature. So we should do it for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna. I can humbly say for myself, I've never asked to give class. I mentioned something to you the other day because I'd like to share something and because I want to associate with devotees. But it struck me after our conversation, I thought, it's the first time I've ever done that. I've never asked anybody to give class. It's just if Krishna arranges, the devotees want, then we do that. And if they don't want, that's good. Maybe they don't want to hear from us. That means they're intelligent. Why should we think in any other way? If we think in any other way, we're just a fool. And we're an illusion. So that's my comment, Ujjwala Rasika Mataji. Lalita Mataji has some comment. Thank you very much for a wonderful lecture, so interesting and nourishing. I was wondering, is there anything written in the scriptures how Jatila was feeling when Krishna finally left Vrindavan? Was she happy? Or after all, was she sad because when Krishna left? So, interesting question. I've never read directly about that. However, in the Vaidagdha Vilas by Manohar Das, there is a description given about the love Jatila has for Krishna and how her heart melts and how she also likes to serve Krishna. It's a long story. I'm not going to go there because everyone in Vrindavan loves Krishna. But as Rupa Goswami comments in Lalita Madhav, Krishna tells Madhu Mangal when Makara, Radharani's little blind, nearly blind, senile grandmother, when she sees Krishna with Radharani, she starts yelling at him, "You black snake, you keep away from my granddaughter in chastity." And Krishna smiles and he turns to Madhu Mangal and he says, actually, these harsh words of the old ladies of Braj are more relishable than the prayers of the personified Vedas. I get more pleasure in that. So Jatila, don't think that how is it that someone got in the spiritual world, oh my God, and she's a critic of Krishna, and this is real. No, she manifests her love by presenting some obstacles for Radharani. And those obstacles increase. Rupa Goswami says this is his definition of prema. When obstacles come, the love increases. And so without Jatila there, how is there going to be obstacles and how can that love increase? So Jatila has an important position. We can comment that, and we can also comment with confidence, although we haven't read directly Jatila's feelings when Krishna left Vrindavan, but our acharyas say that everyone in Vrindavan was crying. Everyone. And that means also Jatila and Kutila, Radharani's so-called mother-in-law and so-called sister-in-law. Brinda Sundari in Denver, Colorado, Hare Krishna, she says, our families listen. The kids like listening. Well, that's really good. You know what I like to do when we give katha, and there's some kids there. First of all, I always go up to the kids and say, isn't it kind of boring to attend class? And they kind of look both ways, and if they say, yeah, it's really boring, but my mother makes me come and do this, because you're supposed to be the next acharya, right? The next pure devotee or whatever. So you were forcing you to go to the class, and it's boring as hell. You got to sit there and listen to all this stuff, So when I give class, sometimes when kids are present, I try to speak to them and say things to them, even if it's only for a few minutes, because they can't digest anymore. They can't sit still for any longer. But it means something to them. And I found amazingly that if you speak to the kids, the adults also digest it a lot easier. So thank you for that, Brinda Sundari. Naman Mehta's comment or basin says, Prabhupada, she says, grateful for your kind discourses which are pure nectar. I hope you're in good health. I'd like to ask you a following question. You kindly mentioned how Krishna and Sudama, how they followed Sandipani Muni's instructions. So how to develop such a mood to follow the instructions of Sri Guru in all circumstances, like protecting the firewood in the rain. So we develop love by serving. Prabhupada speaks about that sometimes, that love means service. And as we do more and more service, when we do that Mahat Seva to Guru, then we get that Kata Ruchi, and that Kata Ruchi also manifests in the form of some affection for Guru. When we serve, and everyone should serve, In the household, the father is the head of the house, and he has so many children. But he also serves by going out and collecting money, and maybe sometimes he also washes the dishes. You can actually do that, men, sometimes, and clean the house when you see the wife is tired or there's some difficulty or something. And the wife serves the children and the husband. And if we're doing it with an attitude of service, then love develops. Because love means service. And Prabhupada, therefore, he translated the word bhakti as devotional service. And bhakti means devotion. And some scholars, they protested, what is this devotional service? But Prabhupada said that it's not passive. That real love means to do something. Anil's comment, it was an awesome talk today. After a long time, I feel like I'm actually sitting with devotees right in front of you. We're going to celebrate the Viraha Utsav for Bhakti Madhurya Govinda Maharaj today in Punjabi Bagh. My pranams to my old friend and well-wisher, my God uncle, Bhakti Madhurya Govinda Maharaj. Thank you for saying that, Prabhu. I remember many times giving class there in Punjabi Bagh and Maharaj coming and sitting in my class and embarrassing me and coming and giving me a big hug afterwards. And I remember him from when I first joined in Los Angeles in 1982. Very special. Ujjwala Rasiga Mataji comments further. Thank you for the answer. Would you be putting extra efforts, introspection to see if there's anything more you can do to serve better, or just not do anything about it, but just continue to speak even if no one is present? Well, we should, one beautiful example of our Krishna Katha that should go on even when no one is present is our japa. We should always be chanting. And that's ahoitaki seva. There's hoitaki and ahoitaki seva. Hoitaki seva means with a motivation, because you're going to be famous, because you're going to get money, because you're going to get prasadam or this or that. But ahoitaki means there's no motivation. And that ahoitaki seva is the best service. And that's the service when no one else knows you're doing it. And it means so much to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada said that when no one was present, I used to give class to the walls. And can you imagine how much Krishna must have appreciated that? How it must have touched Krishna's heart. He's really doing it. There's no reason for this. He's just doing it out of love for me. No one's present here and he's speaking. It must have melted Krishna's heart. So we should do it. But at the same time, let's be blunt and frank and honest. For those artists, for those musicians, for those speakers, those intellectuals, those writers, we also live on what Krishna tells Uddhava, he calls paraspara, means some back and forth. There should also be we have art. Three elements are there in art. There's the art, the painting, or the music, or the poetry, or the dance, or whatever it is that the artist is doing. So there's the art, there's the artist, but there has to be a third element for the medium of art. You may have the most brilliant painting, the greatest artist, but if there's no connoisseur, if there's no person there to appreciate it, and in this regard, our acharyas have commented, where does Krishna's beauty reside? And he said that Krishna's beauty does not reside in himself. Rather, it resides in the eyes of the devotee. And without the devotee, there's no sense of Krishna's beauty. So there has to be some connoisseur, some person to appreciate it. And in terms of Krishna Katha, in your question, Krishna says, parasparanu kathanam, that this katha should be back and forth, and just like we're having now. The devotees should have some reflections, they should make some comments and questions and things. And then there's some respect, and then that back and forth, it's nectar. There's some reciprocation. Someone's cooking a wonderful meal, and if you give you cook all day long, and you give that to the devotees, and nobody says anything. How do you feel? You feel a little hurt. You feel a little sad. There should be some reciprocation. Now, in one sense, we can say, well, that reciprocation, that's hoitaki, that's motivated. We shouldn't have to want that. We should be so selfless that we don't want. But we're not on that platform yet. And therefore, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta told the story about all glories to hot rice and ghee, which maybe some of you know that story. I won't tell that right now because we're getting a little late. How sometimes someone needs some encouragement. They need some hot rice and ghee. They need some sweet words. They need to have a position. Otherwise, they won't really be inspired to go and do something. And we serve Guru. How do we want to encourage everyone, we want to empower everyone. Our movement's all about empowering others. It's not about working our way up the rank and file till we're in charge. And when we're in charge of something, that means now I've really attained success. Success means we empower others. That's what our movement's all about. So we empower our friends by encouraging them with sweet words. We empower younger persons than us, junior persons to us, by encouraging them and glorifying what they're doing. And even we can encourage and empower our Guru Janas in the same way, because they want to know, did you hear what I said? Did any of this stick to your ears, to your heart? Are you actually picking up on anything, or is it just some entertainment or something? So in that sense, we can also empower Guru, but by reflective hearing. It's a very important principle. Anil Prabhu says, Maharaj, love to listen to you. Somehow that was my service for Maharaj in a way too. Hare Krishna. Naman Mehta says, grateful for your kind answer. Please stay safe. Hare Krishna. Neil says, he also told me that you're a good boat to jump into to survive in the forest of the material world. He really appreciated you. I hope you're okay, Anil Prabhu. Anil, for those who don't know, is very close to Bhakti Madhurya Govinda Maharaj. She was serving him in many ways. And it must be hard for you now, after Maharaj's disappearance. But with the disappearance of the devotees, we should look, there's actually a gift that Krishna's giving to us also. We should understand that as Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, Prabhupada's godbrother, famously said, the environment is always friendly. And whatever situation we find ourselves in, we should understand Krishna's given this, and there's some benefit for me. The COVID virus is there. The lockdown is there. There's Krishna's trying to give me a message. What is he trying to tell me? What is the lesson? What can I do better? How can I go deeper in this? And when we find ourselves in separation from the devotees, like we do now with COVID, or like we do in separation when a wonderful devotee like Makhan Lal Bhakti Madhurya Govinda Maharaj leaves his body, what can we learn? We can learn to honor and respect their teachings to us by remembering them with love and affection. And they'll still continue to live with us. And it's a test at that time. So Anil Prabhu, I was thinking about you, and thank you for taking part today and reminding me of Maharaj. Sri Thakur Prabhu, Hare Krishna, all the way from St. Petersburg. Nice to see you. How can we serve you? If you're hearing, that's a service. Guru Maharaj used to say that's the best service. And maybe you can give some prasadam sometimes also. That's also really good. When we went anyway, we won't tell that story about St. Petersburg, and they tried to kill us with chocolate cake. So now I want to turn to the devotees here in the room. If anybody has any reflections or comments, anything? Krishna Kund, you want to share something? This is our space alien here.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. It was very sweet katha. I was especially struck by 2 points. One of them was that Krishna and Balaram were banned from serving Sandipani Muni in difficult ways, but they were doing service. That resonated with me, yes. But they were doing some service secretly, and of course you elaborated on how service becomes spoiled when it becomes external and show off, so I will not go into that more, but it was really beautiful, really sweet. And the other point that struck with me was, it stuck with me because it's very relevant for us, that Krishna was specifically attracted to Sudama because he has a friend called Sudama in Vrindavan, the Gopak Sudama. And Arjuna in the same way, he has an Arjuna friend in Vrindavan, and then he was attracted to the Pandava Arjuna. Of course, he is also an eternal associate of Krishna, but yeah. And I was thinking about that story of Kishori in Vrindavan, about that story where a materialist is left by his wife leaves him, and he goes to Vrindavan. Goes to Varshana, yeah. Goes to Varshana.
Trying to find his wife.
You want to tell a story?
Yeah.
Anyway, so my husband will tell the story in a minute. But I was thinking how fortunate we are that Gurudev accepts us and he gives us a spiritual name, which is the name of Krishna or Radharani or their associates. And maybe one day we can become a little dearer to them because we were given this name.
So there's this lusty materialistic person who got married, and his wife's name was Kishori. And after some time they had some argument and she left him and he was crying and trying to find her. And he was searching in Barsana. And he's wandering around Barsana and calling out, Kishori, Kishori, and crying. Now one of Radharani's very sweet names is Kishori. She's a young girl. And so when she heard that, her heart immediately melted. And she told Lalita, you go and see who's calling for me. And Lalita went and checked up, and she came back and she said, he's not calling for you. He's calling for a bag of stool and urine. Puss. He's calling for some material woman. And Radharani said, but he's calling my name here, but you should bring him to me. And she Lalita brought that poor man to Radharani, and she had darshan by the mercy of Lalita and Radharani. So that's the story. Booji has something, William? You want to come over here, please? Yeah. It's talking to the ball. I'm sorry.
I had a question about Shiva's followers.
Uh-huh.
So, for those that have the misconception that Shiva is like the personality of Godhead, the supreme, would they still get the mercy of Krishna? Or because there's one of the offenses, right, which stipulates that if one considers the demigods as being as superior to Krishna, well, that would be an offense. So I was just wondering if, for those that have the conception of Shiva being the supreme.
Okay. Two comments on that. First of all, they're better than the non-devotees because there's some connection with Shiva, and they may hear at some point that Shiva is a devotee of Krishna. Or they may get, as Prabhupada said to Brahmananda, they may get Shiva's blessings in the form of Krishna bhakti or some instruction about Krishna. And I had something else I was going to comment on too, but it slipped my mind.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have anything? We're very fortunate to have the world famous Govinda with us today.
I think I like the points that Krishna Kun made. I had a similar stood out to me as well. And I also thought about that, how this world, that comment that the devotee made in Ukraine, there's no love in the material world. But how, that's two comments about that, how the I love you, I really like how you split that, because it's so true. Who is I, what is love, and who's you? And then people are so lost, even even psychologically speaking, I'll speak about spiritually, they're so lost about so many levels. So people really need help. That's what I thought that way.
Yeah.
And also among devotees, the misconception of what is love, material love and spiritual love. Because I've heard that spiritual relationships, they remain eternally. And it's an investment on an eternal thing, like developing a close, affectionate relationship with the Vaishnava. We shouldn't overlook that, we need that. So just thought about it, really nice.
Thank you. In Brihad Bhagavatamrita, there's a conversation between the two greatest brahmacharis of all time, Narad Muni and Hanuman. And Narad Muni, it's Hanuman telling Narad Muni. Hanuman's telling him about the Pandavas, and he said, don't think that they're in Maya because they're married. And because we're brahmacharis, we're better than they are. So, but actually they're great devotees, and the love and Yudhishthira really loves Draupadi. He really loves Draupadi, and Draupadi loves him, and he loves his brothers, but their love is based on Krishna. They love them because Krishna's in the center. Now, let's be really frank, we're not all on that platform. And there is some skin disease. There has to be some attraction materially for husband and wife. Otherwise, how is it going to work? But if we only leave it on that platform, then the relationship may very well break up after some time. So the relationship, we want to keep Krishna in the center, and then that love will grow and grow. Oh, we're doing service together, and they're serving the devotees in such a wonderful way. They're speaking such nice Krishna Katha, they're doing such nice kirtan, and our love grows for them and for Krishna at the same time. So we can't separate love for Krishna and love for the devotees. It's such an important thing. And including in marriage. We should love our husband, we should love our wife as devotees, we should love our children as devotees. And if we don't love them, then what the hell are we doing? How are we going to love Krishna? How are we going to love anyone else? And in the beginning, we don't have real love. We have some bodily type of love, or maybe there's some sense of kartavya buddhi, some duty that I have. But that kartavya buddhi, if we render service, can also lead to love. And especially if Krishna is in the center of things, he's the center of all love. So Naveen's asking, do we have class tomorrow? What do you think, Krishna Kun? We could do class tomorrow. We don't have the Sunday class. So we will have class tomorrow at the same time. And we'll make some further announcements. I'm kind of redoing our schedule. I'm a little confused about things right now, but we'll have a katha tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow morning, same time. So I want to thank everybody very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samabeda Bhaktabinda ki jai, Vanchakalpatarubhascha Kripa